Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, late afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone. Notice is hereby given of a regular workshop meeting of the Directors District Board of Directors to be held at 105 Fort Road, Port Isabel, Texas, on March 29, 2023, at the hour of 4 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on March 23, 2023, at 4 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551-041-551-050. We do have the presence of a quorum today. Present, we have Dr. Lalonde, Mr. Friedman, and Mr. Donahue. Joining us shortly, we should have Mr. Blotter and Mr. Starkey. I may please have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your great blessings you bestow on us and for bringing us together again to discuss the business of the Water District. Lord, we ask for your continued guidance to help us understand the workshop material that will be presented before us. Help us to evaluate this presentation and have a meaningful discussion so that we can later make a decision that will benefit our customers. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Thank you. Let's move to item 3, discuss desalination treatment plant with reverse osmosis. Welcome, Bill Norris. Thank you. Go ahead.
What a pleasure it is to be back in front of this board. Had a lot of good times over here. Tough times, good times, all about water though. I just have a fairly brief presentation, and this presentation is really about, it's not about Norris Layout, it's about the district and looking at seawater desalination, and then how we would propose to go about putting that desalination plant in, whether you do private money or public money. And so what I'm looking at doing is, I'll give a brief slide on Norris Layout, just because I've known Scott for many years, so he knows about us, but the rest of the board probably doesn't have too much background information. Kind of the Laguna Madre historical experience, talking about the water supply issues that face us, especially those that are on the lower end of the Rio Grande, that it takes a while to get water here and it may not make it in times of drought. And then the concept that we have put together on seawater desalination, which we've done for a few entities. And so it wasn't like we spent a lot of time doing it. We just had the knowledge to put it together pretty quickly. One of the big things is, I know that the district is looking at procurement as a P3, our public-private partnership. And then I want to do a comparison of that with you doing it yourself. Capital cost comparison, and then comparing O&M costs with the different delivery methods. What does that do to your rates? Because you're going to spend a few $1 million, and you need to be aware of what that rate impact is going to be. And then maybe whatever next steps, how you want to proceed with this, funding, however, getting in line for funding or whatever that case may be, and then open it for whatever discussions. So, but if you have a question right in the middle of a slide, bring it up. This is informal for me, and just presenting some information that if you say, well, I don't really care about that, let's go to the next slide, and that's fine with me. I'm not proud. So we started with the district way back in 1984, moved to the Valley from an East Texas firm. So we've been leaders in desalination. It's a two-edged sword. If you specialize in desalination, there's not as many desalination projects to do. So when you do streets and water lines, we did all that with the district, but we're more known for kind of specializing in desalination and trying to make it cheaper. Our first plant was 1988 with the city of Harlingen, where we took the wastewater and treated it through RO to deliver water to Fruit of the Loom. And that was in operation for 10 years until Fruit of the Loom couldn't compete with the textile market, even using Mexico labor. So they ended up shutting down in the US and moving overseas. Um, So I think one of the key things, and Jesus and I have been partners for 30 years. And so we were Norris NRS, Norris Rice and Stone, and then Jesus became a partner. A little bit about us, we ended up being acquired by a Spanish company called Abengoa. So we kind of evolved into not just a design firm, but we evolved into construction and operations, because we saw that these projects weren't being done cost effectively. And we've trying to develop ways to save the owner, 30 to 40% in the cost of implementing the projects. So just to give you an example, the full recovery desalination plant in El Paso, it was a small plant, but it was extracting everything out of it with a zero discharge. We were creating acid, caustic, gypsum, and magnesium calcium chloride, and with zero waste. And that they went out for bids to a couple of companies. I won't mention the names, but it was $100 million bid. And we told them that we could do that. At the time we had 11 people, and they kind of said, yeah, really. But till they got the bids in, it says, because we had already gotten 200 quotes and everything else for the whole project. And we ended up doing it in 14 months for $45 million. And so that won an international award and a state award for that project. I said, long history with Laguna Madre since 1984. That's when we first started, and you were trucking water across the bay for the island. And Marshall Vickers, the general manager, and on a napkin, my other partner at the time said, hey, this is what we need to do, even though he didn't even know my partner. They met on the plane, and said, okay, we'll do engineering for you till you pass your bond issue. So we worked for free until the bond issue was done. And so that began our history with Laguna Madre. Working for free is not, it ended up being a pretty good investment for us, a really good investment. And we did the 2 pilot plants for seawater, one, and I'll get to them in a minute. And then in 2009, we were the International Desalination Company of the Year. That was given to us in Europe, which was pretty cool award. But we're local. I mean, we're not international. We're in Harlingen. That's where we started, and that's still our headquarters. So internationally, with Abengoa, that was the company that acquired our firm back in 2007, I think it was, and they gave it back to us in end of 2012. 1 year later, they went bankrupt. So it was a Spanish company, and so the largest desal company in the world. They didn't do business. Well, they didn't do the same type of business we did. So it was kind of a different model. But those are 3 almost over 26 MGD seawater plants that we were associated with Abengoa. Talking about this particular slide shows the reservoir storage before the early 90s, and as you can see, back in around 2000, that's when the reservoirs were really a long period of drought. And in 1997, the black marks there are the ones that are the arrows that are in yellow are the Laguna Madre projects. In 97, and then in 2010, you did a seawater pilot. The first one was kind of sanctioned more by the district because they wanted to see if we could do that. And of course, that's when the rivers or the reservoirs were at pretty low capacity. And it was feasible, but there was no follow-through or action to do that. The 2010 study is done on the island. The first one was at the jetties, and the 2010 study was what promoted the bond issue to be passed. There where you got the $15 million in the tax bond issue, which was about 10 years ago, I think, has been since that was passed. But because of the drought, all these projects have been done in the valley. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for North Alamo Water Supply Corporation, and 1 for Southmost Regional, which is Brownsville, which serves 4 entities. And Laguna Monterey is a member of that, but they opted out of the project back when it was done in 2004. It was expanded in 2015, and they're looking at 2 more expansions right now. And if they hadn't had that, they were about out of water at that time. So, right, yeah.
Is there anywhere in the valley getting seawater?
No.
Like Brownsville doesn't get any.
No. When,
Any salt water even?
no, well, I mean, brackish is
Brackish,
salty.
right. So they get, they're pumping up from a brackish.
Yeah, all of these plants that are shown here are all
There's no one
brackish
in the
plants.
state of Texas right now. Is it?
There's no seawater
Yeah,
plants
there's
in
not any.
Texas.
Anyway,
There was one way back in Freeport that's when you had the drought of the 50s, that's when it's desalination, membrane treatment was invented because of the drought. And that's when they built all the reservoirs when that drought. And then they stopped building reservoirs in the 70s because of the environmental conditions. To build a reservoir is impossible. So right now, 23, I haven't checked it in a couple of months, but it's probably in the 30% range of storage capacity. And you're getting to go through a summer. Yeah, and so you're going through a summer. It's impossible to put something in by this time.
26.5.
Yeah. So that's even lower than what is shown on the graph. And it's only been above conservation level mostly before in early 90s, late 80s. You see a little peak there in probably 2011, but it doesn't take long to drop. If you don't have it used to be that the water management strategy for the valley was a hurricane, and which is hard to wish for, especially when you live out here. So just to show you the long time experience here in the 97 seawater pilot that was at the jetties, you can see your general manager there on the top right. He looks about the same. And then Jesus and I at the plant.
Carlos?
That's Carlos on the right.
The top one?
Yeah.
Man, ladies.
And the left one is Jesus, and the right one is me. I was skinnier back then too.
All that hair.
But you talk about experience. That's how many years ago? 25 years ago? 25 years of experience. And then 2010 was a little more elaborate. Partially funded 1/3 by the Water Development Board and 2/3 by the Water District. And it was pretty elaborate. I think we operated that for at least 6 months, wasn't it? And we did conventional filtration, microfiltration, and
you helped us get the money for the water development on that also.
Yeah, we did. Put the application together. And back at that time, when Governor Perry was the governor, he had a seawater initiative. And then when he wasn't governor, nobody really wanted to help anymore. Now we've got senators and representatives that want to put $3.1 billion into seawater, brackish water, small water systems, replacing old systems. So the latest part on that is I think it passed unanimously out of the Senate Finance Committee, which introduced the bill. And if both House and Senate pass the bills, goes to the governor to sign. And the next step is they want to send it to the voters at the next election to authorize the whatever number they put in there. We've got year numbers, but by the time it gets to the final bill, you don't know what that's going to be. But $3 billion has been talked about.
That's got to be approved in the referendum.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, that's what they're proposing, because not always do they have excess revenues. And I think the elected officials there, they would rather send it to the voters.
In order to spend it out of the rainy day fund, you have to
I don't know.
I don't know that they have to do that. I think politically they want to do that so that the voters have a say-so as to where the excess funds go. And we'll see.
Fair enough.
But it gives you, the way I look at it, the projects that are closer to shovel ready rather than, yeah, we're going to do that. I think they'd have a better chance in getting some of those funds. So these are all the plants that were shown on that graph. Kind of hard to see, but you had southmost couple of expansions, and you got 3 counties, Cameron, Hidalgo, and Willacy, having projects. And what I put this picture on there for just to give you an idea of what a brackish plant looks like. It's hard to tell, but the left side where the longer building, and then you can just draw a straight line. That's the desal plant. The other part is their existing surface water plant. You got a sludge lagoon on the bottom. I think you got your filtration clarifiers there. And then on the right-hand side, which takes up a whole lot more room, is the reservoir, raw water storage reservoir. So you can see this is about a 2.5 million gallon a day brackish plant built on, I think it was about an acre, wasn't it? 1.5 acres.
Yeah, about that.
So, so those were all done really quickly and efficiently, and and they're in the under $2 per thousand range on all those. Obviously, 10 years ago, money was cheaper, so things are a little bit higher with inflation now.
This plant's located off of the toll road on the right-hand
No, this
side.
is Donna.
Oh, this one's in Donna.
Yeah, this one is Donna. I don't have a picture in here.
But it's in a packet.
The southmost?
I'm talking about the.
This one.
That one,
Yeah.
you can't see it good. It's in there.
This is the Donna one.
Yeah, that's the Donna plant. And that's the one that they hired us to design and build. We built that plant back, I think, actually when Abengoa acquired us, this was too small of a project for them. And we showed them that as well. Hey, can we get 10 more of those? I sure, we can find them. So concept, I won't spend a lot of time here, but taking an intake system, and we'd have some type of strainer. We prefer on the pilots that we've done all for Brownsville, which the Brownsville ship channel, if you can treat that water, you can treat just about any water. Because when a ship would go by, you'd go from about 60 turbidity to 4,000. I think it was 4,000. I mean, it's just muddy. You almost have to shut it down. But the microfiltration that we used, and we did 3 others plus conventional, and none of them could hold up to the varied water quality to satisfaction. So that's why we tend to like microfiltration. Properly designed provides, and you're doing a microfiltration plant for your surface water. And then we end up doing the other one at plant number 1. So we like the process. It's not cheap, but it's reliable. And when you're doing drinking water, we want the best. And then we go through the RO membrane facility, pretty much that with chemical additions, but it would be blended with your existing surface water treatment water. And then we can talk about how, in the next slides, we'll talk about how everything fits together. Any questions on, I mean, it's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to, I mean, there's a lot to it, but to me, it's simpler than your conventional plant where you got chemical clarifiers, you got a lot of different equipment. This is pretty straightforward. So this is a conceptual building layout, and we had done this. This is a 3MGD layout. On the right-hand side, there's 3 trains. Those are the RO trains, and it looks like there's 5 microfiltration units, which the difference between designing cleaner water, when I say cleaner water from your water treatment plant, that's pre-treated. It doesn't have barnacles. It doesn't have a lot of things that you'll find in the marine water. So that's kind of the layout. What we did in this particular plant, because we were looking at actually building this and then charging, like it was a P3, and to offset our cost, we were looking at putting a water treatment system for bottled water and selling bottled water to HEB and different things from there. So it would help offset some costs, and it's nothing that can't say you couldn't do that, put a bottled water facility in Laguna Madre, Laguna Madre Springs or something like that, you know.
Watermelon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying to do that, but it's just looking at that option. So, you know, just a little conceptual drawing. So this is, this I want to spend a little bit of time on this just to kind of compare conventional. When I say P3 or public-private, that would be somebody just coming in and do it all, which we can do too. But in this particular case, I think you'll see that it's a lot more cost-effective for you to do this. Conventional would be you doing it, hiring an engineer, designing it, bidding it out in maybe various parts of the project, and then overseeing the project as it gets built. So I'm going to just go one by one. You have $15 million that you have authorized but not sold. And I'm assuming those are GO bonds that go on your tax rate, which is broader band for people that, for reserve, they may not be using the water. So it's on a tax rate. If you do a P3, that entire P3 is over your rate case. So if you're charged at $7, $8, $6, that's the rate, and it's take or pay no matter what, whether you use it or not. So on your tax rate impact, there's none on the P3, and I would say moderate on depending on what your overall capital cost is. Risk, I don't consider desalination a risk to me, but I put moderate anyway. I know that a P3, they take all the risk, but I don't think if you hire the right company to put it in as your engineer, construction manager, I don't see a risk if you hire the right person, and there's people out there that can do that. So I don't consider any advantages on the risk side. It's kind of like walking across the street. I don't charge extra to walk across the street because I've done it before, and so I don't charge you extra for that. Not that it's that simple, but it's similar. If you know what you're doing, it's not as risky. Cost of money, obviously, if I'm going to finance this, my interest rate is going to be higher than your interest rate. So in my example, I used 8% for me and 5% for you. And those are just assumptions. Who knows what the end product would be. From the operation standpoint, you have power is the most expensive piece of seawater RO, but you have the cheapest rate in the valley at 4 cents. That rate's not going to last. When's it up?
20%?
Yeah. So it's going to raise that price that I showed tonight because I used 4 cents because that's what we have right now. But what is advantageous is off-peak and interruptible supply. So when I was looking at a project in Brownsville, they buy off the grid. You can shut the plant down if there's hey, 4th of July, let's shave that off, because this plant's not necessarily for capacity as much as it is for supply. It's both. Because if you have 10 MGD capabilities and your peak demand is 7, you don't have to use that plant during the peak. And so, okay, if you can shave 10% of the year, don't use the plant during peak times, they might go from 8 to 4. Because when we were looking in Brownsville, it was more like 5 to 2.5. Because they have that excess power in some times that they can't sell. So it's kind of working that. I don't think you can do that with a P3. You're not working that system because it's not advantageous for you to do a P3 with off-peak power because they have a take or pay. If they don't operate on off-peak or peak power, you have to pay for the water anyway. So that's a pretty big advantage. I'm not saying that you can do that, but it has been done. And that's, if you do a P3, that's kind of off the table. I think you have more flexibility because you can say, I'm going to build a 2 MGD because I got more grant money, and I'm going to use it 1 MGD, but I can use 2 if I need it. And you can just alternate the system. So you've got a lot of flexibility in the system. And this is going to be more expensive water than your surface water. So you don't want to use it when you got cheaper water to use. Not all the time, but you want to use it. It's more like an insurance policy. Personnel cost, they got, I think I had calculated it, or Jesus had calculated it for a 3 MGD plant. We were at about $200,000 a month for personnel. And talking with the staff here, they have the personnel to run it and they can be trained. They've got microfiltration already. I find it easier to train, we find it easier to train municipalities than it is to train corporate operators, because this is their plan. You know, we're going to make this work, and they have a lot more at stake to make it work, and not to make it work because it's going to be, it'll work. So labor cost is pretty high, but if you can deal with your own staff, that makes a big difference. So now you've got a new water, you've got to integrate it with your existing system. If you got somebody over here that's in their own bubble, and you've got yours, you've got to be able to figure out, integrate how much, okay, where do we take it? Because we're doing the same thing in Alice with the P3. And so it's a little more complex. It's moderately complex to blend waters, but it can be done, but it's just an extra level of complexity. We've talked about raw water blending, bringing seawater into the reservoir system and lowering the salinity of, so power, the higher the salt, the more it costs. So for an example, seawater, 30,000 parts per million of salt compared to brackish at 3. Takes us 150 pounds of pressure to do the brackish, more like 900 pounds of pressure to do the salt water. So the higher the salt, you got to get it out. So the talks about
the dirtier water, as you said, with the Brazil ship channel being so dirty, is that
Yeah.
also?
Yeah, the pre-treatment
Same.
cost for that was probably 30% of the total cost. It was very robust. It can be done, and it was feasible to do.
So we're back, I don't want to derail the conversation, but are we back to, is that the best place to go to is the Brazil ship channel?
Well, you're in the Port Isabel ship
Yeah,
channel,
when I
which
was-
is a lot better.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I think you'll see less salinity in there. And because if this was your only source of water, we could have mechanisms to, okay, ships coming by and we see if the turbidity comes up for, let's say we put storage inside the plant. And let's cut off the inflow of water coming into the plant because we have a little bit of storage when the water gets really dirty because of, I don't know, red tide or ships passing in the night where you've got the turbidity. But I think they're getting ready
They're
to,
gonna dredge that
when they
5
dredge
feet.
it, the water quality is going to be a lot better because it didn't stir up all the loose stuff in the basin. So I think, and plus you're off channel, you're not in the main part where the way it's potentially located is going to be off the channel. It's not going to be high volume.
Yeah, we're
it'll
just
be
pushing barges through there. There's no real big ships that go through there.
So I think you're going to be, to me, what you've got available to you in Port Isabel is as good as you can get. I think in both in the permitting and the construction.
What was the fear at the jetties? I mean, you got poo-pooed, but with the stirring up, having a
No,
problem
the
with the jetties too?
jetties was a good location. I think, back then we had, everybody had an opinion, to put it nicely, I think. And I think at that time, it was more like a novelty at the jetties. It was like, yeah, this is really a good idea, but what do you do with good ideas if you don't act upon them? So nothing was acted. Water was still cheap and water was still available, even though it was at the bottom of that flow in the reservoir. That was like an 8-year period of very low flow. It was very scary. But people would also say that, well, and this is a true statement, you will always have water in the reservoir. You just can't get it. So like during the drought in 2004, 3, for every gallon you order, they had to release 10 just to get it through the hydrilla, the theft of the water, because people, you got what, a bunch of miles that people can pull out without just, hey, I'm losing my crop, I got to have some water. So when you run out, it's going to be a little bit different, or a lot different. So take or pay is a big one. And you'll see when I get to the next slide, let's say you decided to build a 2 MGD, but you're really going to use 1. You're only paying your operation costs for 1 MGD. If you contract for 2 MGD, you got to take 2. That's 50% of your, if you're averaging 4 million gallons a day per year, I know you got peaks, but your average across is 4, 50% of your water is going to have to come from the more expensive process. $2 compared to $7 or whatever. And that's, you'll see the numbers here in a minute. I don't think, a lot of people say you can do P3 faster. I think our delay, our longest lead time is your financing and your permit. I don't think, they might be able to shave some time off on design build where they're kind of overlapping the design, but maybe a few months, but I don't think it's too significant. Operator training, theirs is included in their price. I think that in the conventional, if you're doing it, it's going to take some training, just like any of the plants that we've done. We've trained and turned up operators, and plus we're right, 25 miles away. Plus you can be on the screen too, whatever it takes. I mean, I'm talking about, or anybody could do that with a screen, not just us, but there's other people that can do that. I'm not trying to make a sales pitch for us. And you will have cost increases. With the P3, usually it's tied to the CPI. So if you had, like this year, I don't know what CPI was, but I've been here for so long, Social Security it takes place, and I got a big raise. So based on the cost of living, like 7 or 8%. So you would have a 7 or 8% increase in, I don't even know if that's high enough, but you've had increases in your budget, but you really haven't increased the rate. So you absorb it some way. So your cost increase is going to be actual, and then you're going to find ways to curb the cost, whereas it's a blanket CPI. So anyway, those are just some things that we came up with just to kind of have an idea on the difference between the way that you would do the project. Now this, I got to put a caveat on this. I haven't estimated what a 2 MGD plant will cost because it's a little more in depth. But I'm gonna say that a 2 MGD plant, for illustrative purposes only, is $30 million. And then where do we go from there? So in a P3, I'm assuming that they can probably do it a little cheaper than what we bid it for, because they can probably be a little bit more efficient within their design. It's probably kind of more like a design build, so I think they can do it cheaper. So I'm gonna, and this is making a big assumption that we would ask for 50% funding, or maybe you could do 25% from Bureau Rec, 25% from the state. So if we could get that to 50 million or 50% and a 20-year payback, I'm assuming, I don't know what the rates you're paying now, but it's probably a little higher than 5% if you were to go out for bonds, but it's probably higher than 8%. So I'm trying to just do relative. So your annual loan payment is 1.2, and the private companies probably has closer to 2.8. Some of them may have some cash, but money has a value. So that cost per 1,000 gallons just for the capital is $391 to $165. And that $165, because your GO is going to be spread out over the whole district, not the ratepayers, the taxpayers.
That's about what we heard, right? When the last guys were here, you have to double your rate, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's only capital. We ain't got to the operation
Got
yet.
to the operation.
So here's the operation. So I brought back over, if you can see, The loan payment up on top is $391 on the left and $1.65. So power costs is, I figure it's gonna be the same, it's gonna be a pass-through or whatever with a private company or this one. Personnel is our calculation of what we think the plant would do if we didn't use the district personnel. And I have 0 for the district because and it's not that it doesn't cost your manpower to do it. This is additive. This is not adding to your existing rates. And so sinking fund is replacement of parts and materials that we put money aside to replace membranes in 5 years. So you don't have to have a big capital expenditure to do that. So we put that in there. Chemicals are going to be the same, whether you're private or public, and just other expenses for routine maintenance and stuff. So just O&M cost, and O&M plus your total cost is $541 for private and $289 for public. But then if I'm building a plant for you, I've got to make some money. And you're going to pay me for that risk, even though you're not taking the risk, but you're paying somebody to take that risk. So I got contingency of 15% to figure out, if it goes over that they're not eating it, and they hope that they don't abuse a contingency, and then a 15% profit. Now those are probably in the negotiating stage, but if you add all that together in a 2 MGD plant, your total cost is $7 per 1,000 gallons compared to under 3 for the district. Does that make sense? I mean, because you're also financing in that, well, actually 289 is assuming that's the actual cost of water. That's assuming the tax rate too.
I would have loved to have seen that with our actual cost. with the
Okay,
personnel.
I've got it on the next slide.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Like my final cost. on
Right.
this stuff.
I'm trying to, so when I take things out, I can show you, because I pulled the budgets, I averaged the budget or the actual expenditures just from the water plant personnel, the management of the personnel, and the operations, chemicals and everything else. So,
Wouldn't you need more personnel?
Yeah, we said we needed one. I thought that's what you guys told me.
We actually don't, because, probably our staff here, the intention was to have 24-hour running the plant, and we have available operators to do that anyhow. So we're gonna run this plant 100%. All we have to do is cut that one off at night, maybe switch operators over here, and then just keep it
What-
going there. We worked out the scheduling on that, so we don't need to hire anybody else for that.
so what makes this one, and who has, Doctor, did you ask a question about what happened on the one on the island? Why did we lose track? Somebody asked a question, why did we go there? One of the big things, we're co-locating next to a water treatment
Yeah,
plant with
yeah,
operators.
I remember
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that
that's a really,
before. And I
really
wasn't
big.
really curious about why it's not there. I was curious what the road bumps were, and you just explained.
It just didn't take, it was a good indication, but it just didn't take hold.
Right.
But co-locating, the cheapest projects, when you can co-locate next to another plant
Makes
and
sense.
utilize the same facilities. We're not building a ground storage tank and high service pumping. We're using, probably $3 or $4 million worth of infrastructure we don't have to put in for the seawater plant.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
having that.
during the graveyard shift, we wouldn't need to operate both plants. We'd only need one plant, so we can shift
I
the
understand.
operator from one plant to the other.
Yeah, but also having that outfall extension that we did with the sewer plant work, and that also assists the RO concentrate using that pipeline for the system.
Right.
So that helps.
So all in total cost, including if tax bonds are included in the total cost of water, is $289 compared to $7. And that, I think that's a fairly, in using the same amount for each one for the cost, or pretty close to the same. There's a big disparity. And now we can adjust numbers. Okay, well, let's assume we're doing, because my original number, I had $75,000 a year for one more person in there. And it raised it I want to say 10 cents maybe, if that much.
Mhm.
So this is a little, I highlighted the stuff that's really, I want to see. I reiterated up on the top part, effect on the tax rate for the public finances, $1.65 on taxes and $1.24 for your operation per 1,000 gallons. In the blue is existing water expenses. In the green is the desal portion. So right now, the current annual cost of surface water, just from the plant, not in the distribution system, but at the plant, is a little over $2.1 million.
Get it to the plant or the clean?
From the plant. So it's from the raw water system to the plant, your personnel, everything that they sent to me in the budget. I just pulled out just plant costs to get drinking water at the plant, not getting drinking water at the house. So it doesn't, because that's, if I'm comparing it to the P3, they're getting drinking water to your plant to distribute. So I'm trying to compare the same thing. So, so it's cost $1.47 to make the water at the plant. If we add two surface, and I'm talking annual average because that's what we're talking about, 2 million gallons of surface and 2 million gallons of seawater, doing the blended rate would be 3.91 for public-private partnership and $1.82 for public. That's so I think that's a 19% increase in the public. I didn't figure out the increase, but it looks like it's almost 2.5 times increase. Go from 2 million to 5.7, or 2.1 to 2.6. That's 19% increase. If we oversize the plant and we built a 2 MGD plant, but we only used an average of 1. Just it's your insurance plant. It's your increase your water rights, because every million gallons that you build into that plant is about a little over 1,000 acre feet. So the 2 million gallons a day capacity will give you a comfort level of an additional 2,000 acre feet, which times $3,500 an acre foot, if you were to purchase it, is a pretty good chunk of change. And that's what the going rate is to actually purchase water rights, not lease them, but purchase them if you can get them. So what that does is that you reduce the amount of variable cost, which is your chemicals and your power and your miscellaneous. That's really the thing that comes down. Everything else is fixed, goes down to $1.66. So you can go from 2.1 to 2.4, which is I think 11% increase in treatment costs, getting a 2 MGD plant and spending $30 million. So it's an illustration to show about where you are and where you would be, and an illustration of where a public entity, if we were to do it, and I'm sure that I could adjust quite a bit and not get too close, but
So your capital cost comparison, I know it's based on projection 2 MGDs. Is it including a 5 MGD intake? In our previous discussions, we were trying to compare the possibility of growing in the future.
it's not in that detail because we haven't estimated the total. Because 30 million is a illustration. It's not an estimate. It's an illustration to say if you were going to spend, and if you include all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as to dive into conceptual level costs for the intake, I
This
would
isn't the type of representation.
well, the study that the Corps is doing right now,
Yeah.
I mean, that study for the Corps is due for completion in September, and that'll include conceptual cost estimates for this intake for monitoring basis. So we'll have that information in September.
Well, to get to treat 5 million, you need 10 because you lose 50% of it.
So two MGD plant needs 4?
Mm-hmm. probably a little more than that, because your recovery, what we call recovery, is probably 45%.
So to get 2, we need a 5 MGD intake?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the court's looking at 10
Grow
feet.
with that logic,
Yeah.
half MGD.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember
So
if that
first that's
information
come
was
up,
passed on.
No, I thought a 5 meant we got 5.
Me
Yeah, I
too.
thought
Yeah.
5, then we got 5 too. So, yeah.
well, they may be talking about 5 throughput, but when we talk about capacity of the plant, we know that we have to get little more than twice as much water to treat it, because you only have 45% recovery. So on
We
a
should've said that.
on a brackish plant, now, while those are
You guys
a
all know
lot
that?
cheaper, it's more like 80%. So,
So for our growth, we'd have to have a 10 coming in.
yeah, or at least the line sizing for that, you could always add pumps and the way we look at the plants, let's say that you did 2, we would design the plant for at least 4. Just the building size. We put in infrastructure to where you can just mirror image and like Southmost in Brownsville,
Right.
we designed
Trains are easy to-
everything for 20, and we put in 7.5 to start with, and now they want to add to get to the 12 MGD capacity, total of 12 MGD capacity, 10 RO with a bypass, and so then to go above that 12 for them, that 8 MGD is really building all new infrastructure.
You better to upsize the intake.
Yeah. That's what I thought we were doing.
Overemphasize the
Yeah.
intake for future growth.
That's what I thought we were
Especially-
doing.
Add and train.
Yeah.
Especially if you can get some funding to do that. The El Paso plant is 27 MGD. They average 6 million gallons a day. But it's named after a famous senator too. So there was a lot of federal dollars associated with it. I don't know how much, but there's
Elon's
also,
paying for our school.
We'd like to
What's
call
that?
it George W.
Elon's
Bush.
paying for our
oh, good.
It is, I've been to the one in
War.
El Paso. It is an impressive facility. Carlos, it's very impressive.
So, I mean, just down the road, if you haven't seen the Southmost plant, it's next year will be its 20th anniversary, and it looks pretty much like the day it was built. They do a good job taking care of it.
You put that one in?
I don't have any other questions.
When can you start?
I've already done it. So that's the next steps. There's, like I said, there's lead time items on these things that, so when we did Brownsville, they needed it in by a certain date. Well, we designed it and ready to bid it like in the December. Well, the financing wasn't ready till April, but they wanted the plant in by June, which fortunately it rained and filled it up. And so they had a little bit of a breather. So they were happy. They're happy that they have it now, and they were ready to start on that expansion pretty quickly. But anyway, that's a different story. So TCQ, what I suggest is getting going as quickly in the baby steps, not spending. I know you've got a grant application in that would probably cover a pilot plant. I suggest a pilot because things have changed. I think we would probably recommend piloting a couple different pre-treatment process, because that's where what kills these plants if it's not properly pre-treated. So I'd recommend doing that, but doing the discharge permitting and the water rights permitting, because you're talking probably 8 to 12 months at best to get those. And then with the Corps of Engineers information is going to help us on that. I think some of the questions you asked, well, how much can we blend? Can we do this? How much is it going to cost? I think you're going to have to do some preliminary engineering to vet these things out, like talking about blending in the reservoir. Is that a good idea or not a good idea? I have my ideas that it could be, and it could affect your cost, but we need to run costs associated with that. We need to really vet the intake and the discharge and the permit. If we can discharge through your existing wastewater effluent line and blend there, it's gonna be phenomenal. But now, how much capacity can we take up in that? So there's a lot of different questions about giving you a conceptual, I won't even say it would go to a 30% design, but 15, 20% to give you a more detailed engineering estimate of what that is. I think that's important. I think with the application, that would could pay for piloting and more of the final design engineering, or at least getting up to more of a lower level to the ground level estimate. And then,
Filed that already.
yeah,
Yeah, that was the one where the deadline was February 28th. So if we do get the notice of award, we want to RFQ for engineering services, and we'd expect that cooperative agreement, the insurance puts in like 30 days.
And
So,
in financing grant pursuit, that's, you want to find that $15-20 million. And if you have your concept, you can sell it better than just an idea. So,
If I may, Bill and Jesus, if you can kind of give some of the background of the projects you've done, the bond issue projects you've done with the district, I think are also important to share.
okay.
With the board.
Well, the first one we did with the district was 1990. That's when we worked with the district. I don't close your for free.
I already wrote that part down.
But my interest rates are really high. We helped them put together a bond issue with Marshall Vickers, and they assured us that we get paid. And I think we helped pass the bond issue. And I remember Larry Stone getting up to the podium like here and saying, it's probably 6 months after the bond issue was passed and they had money. He says, well, my kids need some clothes, and we ended up getting paid. But that was the first, that really, and that, I think we did the line across the bay. There's a 24-inch line that went across the bay because, of course, the old causeway, I think it was still there, but the line didn't work. And they built a new line when they built the causeway going across, but 16-inch wasn't enough to get water to the island. And I don't remember all the stuff that was in there, but
Well,
10 million to 10 or 11, I think it was
Bill
$12
has
million.
a long history working with the district in a lot of the parks. Is most recently responsible for the microfiltration plant, Buena Vista. So there's a lot of working history in it of this the project.
Yeah.
And if I may say another thing, it's important that the entire board and staff are unified in this project moving forward. They're not any little sub pockets of someone with a hidden agenda blindsiding all of this. The board has to be committed to move forward for the sole purpose of desalination moving forward. That's, in a nutshell, the reason why we don't have an existing plan. So I want to stress that to this board going forward. Hopefully, that we can get this unified and get this going forward. It's the most important thing is everyone working, pushing all of this together without, if there's resistance, it needs to be addressed directly and forward. So.
Yeah, and what are the, I asked from the board standpoint, what are the concerns that you would have with just knowing what you know and you've heard, and I'm not here to toot any horns, I'm just here to answer any questions just from the experience.
I think my most concern would be, I feel like we should say that.
I can't let
I
that.
can't, yeah, no.
Sorry.
I can't let,
Thank you.
it's like bad luck or something, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, my major concern is, what's our overall cost, and then are we gonna afford to do it? And how are we going to convince the public that we need to do this and they need to absorb higher rates? Everybody I've ever given the argument, which is, I'd rather have a little bit more expensive water than no water. It's a pretty easy sell. It sells itself. I mean, you're talking, if you spend $1,000 a year on water, you might have to spend $1,200, $1,300. I'd rather spend $300 a year to make sure I have it. Granted, $300 a year is a lot of money to some people in our Laguna Madre area, so we have to try and be respectful of that. I wonder if there's any money out there for disadvantaged populations like ours, which is one of the poorest in the state and what it's about. Are there programs in there? So that'd be another one. And then my last one, piggybacking on what Scott said, is we need general manager, we need plant operations, we need engineering, and we need finance to be 100% on board. And anybody who wasn't on board, if we're going through a project like that, it's probably not the right district for you. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'd rather be clear about it. If finance wasn't on board, Eddie, and you're like, this is the dumbest thing we ever saw, well, there's probably another district that's not doing that. I'm not calling out finance, but same with engineering. Like, hey, if our head engineer doesn't think we should do this, it's the wrong place for that head engineer, right? Or if the guy in the plant is gonna, kind of be going slow, I assume the general manager's on board with that. So I just really think like the closed door meeting before it's in front of the board has to, hey, yes, we're all in, or you know what, you guys, I wish you luck. I'm gonna be shopping my resume around. Cool, do that. We'll help you find that job.
And the board too, the
Yeah.
board has
Yeah.
to be unified. And if there's resistance or questions, they need to be asked.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
kind of outlining how this,
And I think we're all on the same page.
I believe
right?
so going forward, yes. Just want to clarify that that's important.
Every project I've ever done has champion.
No one has answered that question.
What's the question?
About the current, the 2015 bond money, if that's usable or not. No one has really addressed that. I have not heard the clear question. We can use that or we have to.
I thought they did say we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said it.
Can be used.
Yeah, I think you were gone that.
So, okay.
But even with using that.
But that's just, the beginning, no, I mean.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying is because we just did it
Right, right.
Yeah,
You know, we're trying to go back and do another one. Yeah.
it's gonna be a challenge. but-
Well-
It'd be really
Yeah,
cool
but-
to get that 50% from the
And that's-
state
that-
bond, and we're already set.
I think that it's, to me, it's a marketing thing, is having your ducks in a row when you go, because I was up there a couple weeks ago with staff up there and talking to every legislator that's on the Rio Grande. And showed them, hey, there's a lot of people that need this water, that they need some extra push to get this done. And I think seawater is probably one of those key words that no one's doing it, and what's holding it back. Most of the projects that don't go forward, it's usually infighting. This board is different than boards of past.
Some would say the best.
All five people up here would say that.
Well, I've seen Bill in action. I've been with the Water Development Board and Bureau of Reclamation, GLO on previous issues, and I have had and seen a very good relationship and a very good appreciation of Bill, working with Bill and Jesus when you go into the Water Development Board, OI.
And
know
TCQ,
everyone.
I don't know anybody has a
So
relationship like
There's a very
AC.
good working relationship, and those are the people to court and to get this done. And I feel confident recommending and saying that Bill and Jesus are those people that can get you there, and that's what it's gonna take to get. And us being shovel ready, our applications in is going to get us out of the gate faster for getting that money. And that's what it's gonna take to run this.
And I see that our board, you guys are all in the same page, working together. And you have been for the past few years already. And everybody see that. So I believe that it's the best time to move forward because of the situation we're in. The levels are dropping and dropping.
Your levels are 25%, and that's a proven number that's not getting better.
Mhm.
And you're not gonna,
It's a short term getting better if it does.
I mean, your next wave of tropical storms is the end of the summer.
We just had some rain here, but it's not at the right place.
That's
What
not
we
the
need.
plan. That's
Yeah.
not.
What happened to us here is that the revenue's gonna go down because the rain, takes over the irrigation systems. So it's just gonna drop our revenue for this whole week. And, if it would've rained in the reservoirs, then it would've helped because it fills up the reservoir, but it hasn't rained with it.
I don't want to go backwards, but I will. Would there be any advantage, you're kind of the brackish water king, would there be any advantage to doing both? Why can't we have a brackish that mixes with salt intake? Is that feasible?
It is feasible, but I think from the standpoint of you getting, you have two options for brackish. We looked at options going out to around Los Fresnos to drill wells, because you can't.
We're too
You-
close.
Well, you can't, the water's too tight. We even tried drilling ocean wells, but it's too tight and it's saltier. Instead of 30,000, it's 60,000. We're kind of a salt dome. So you got to get at least past Los Fresnos. Build a well field and bring your pipelines in from there. You got to establish the property and do that. So you're kind of like the Southmost project, where they have 20 wells and they bought property all over on the other side of Expressway.
I mean, we got 2 brackish wells at the golf course that produce.
Yeah, but your brackish water they're relatively shallow water, and they won't produce enough to produce.
I was just curious
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, you could do that. The other thing is, you still have the option if Southmost, you're a member of Southmost, you're not a member of Southmost, the project one, but you're a member, you could go in and say, I want to buy in and build this pipeline out here and take part of that water.
And that was voted down.
But you're going to have to pay
Yeah, forget it.
to buy in, you're going to have to buy into the existing plus new. It's kind of worth discussion. It doesn't hurt to have a discussion to see what that looks like to them.
I was thinking we just drill a couple of wells next to where we're at and start mixing all the water together.
That works
Yeah.
for the neighborhood, but not for the district.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't fully understand it, and I just wanted to ask if it was
We
possible.
do have some test wells that they have provided for us years back. Reservoir 4.
Yeah, we did one out there, didn't we?
Reservoir Patas pump station.
Yeah.
The water treatment plant. Where else?
Was Beach Access 6?
The island, 2 pilots up there, one on the
Yeah.
south and one on the north end. So the production of the water the quality wasn't the same as PUDs and the areas that we have available are small. They're not
right.
large.
They're higher
Properties that you need, you know, you need to
lower
separate them like.
quantity and worse quality as you've got to get past, there's a saline line zone around 83. You pass Los Fresnos, you could probably find some.
I mean, we were hit or miss at the golf course too. We did
Yeah.
3 and.
It's a pocket.
Really only
Those
one-
are not
only
aquifer, they're
one-
just pockets
yeah,
of water.
Only one producer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a workshop, and it's one of further action, questions, comments. Feels like this is winding down. Does anyone want to ask, press, as we conclude?
Are we taking all the steps to move with full speed like we've said for the last 6 months to do this? And do we have to arrange any action items on our agenda?
Yes, we do. What we actually need to do is, the possibility of RFQs maybe, or trying to find out, who can provide services to the district, and in that manner of, being a public entity. I don't know if it takes, what is it, P3s? You all have to bid it on P3s too, right?
Yeah, we have the capability of doing that. We make a lot more money on the P3, but I can't, in my mind, recommend that.
We can't afford that.
Yeah.
I would assume though, for budgeting purposes, we just figure we're not gonna get $15 million from Greg Abbott. And right, that's what you're gonna do. And if you do, it's like my wife not shopping next week. It's just a bonus.
Well, obviously, because, for professional services, we can just start negotiating agreement.
Yeah, that would
Choose
be
on
another.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you any obligation beyond that.
That's a request from.
And we've done it a couple times. We're like, well, if we get money from, well, we were number 27 and only picked 2.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so,
for this stage, like saying that seawater account where the core study's at, because we did make some payments in the prior year, I mean, there may be a $65,000 cover balance in that account. So, I mean, that's a budget number. But beyond that, we'd have to figure out how to budget and kind of services.
I understand.
But we need to start with the permitting. I think that process needs to get started soon.
Mhm.
So probably find a way to hire the engineer that's best for us. Charles, what was the recommendation? Would it be RFQs, RFIs?
Well, I think RFQs are optional. I mean, if you already feel there's a firm you wanna enter an agreement with, it's professional services, I think that's within the district's rights, I believe.
We do need to move forward with.
Let's go.
Great, get it on the agenda. For next time.
I'll pre-make the
Move
motion.
forward. One more question, the next meeting is on the 12th. We do have to have a special meeting on the 5th also, because that's on the LIV bonds that have been approved already, and I guess it's a closing date. So we need to have that special meeting on the 5th.
Okay.
So.
We have to make the agenda, so.
Do we?
Did you make the agenda?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
But it's only just for but we can also
Why
add.
don't we put this on? It's a special meeting, you can put anything, right?
Yes, that's what I was gonna ask you. Go ahead and, just cancel the 12th and do the 5th.
Fine with that?
That works for me, because personally, I'm gonna be gone, so I can be at the 5th. Yes? Bill? You're leaving town too. Move the 12th meeting to the 5th.
The 5th at 5? I'm good on the 5th. We gotta do that.
I don't
no matter what. So how, maybe you can answer this, how could we do, switch the board meeting to the 5th, or?
You're not gonna have the
special
agenda
meeting and
ready
cancel
for that.
one?
You can, as long as you give the proper notice to the public, 3 days beforehand, you can have it.
What we can do is, the change of the board meeting from 12th to 5th, and advertise it, and so the agenda items, we can have anything else besides the LIV.
Yeah, we can add this agreement on the agenda.
Let it go back to the 26th then for the next one.
Yes. But, we have to have the 26th also, because there's another approvals that we need by Charles.
Oh, yeah, I'll have items for the water distribution and hospital stations.
Can we get everything that we need on the 5th?
Yes. We'll have whatever we need, for the 12th, and put it on the 5th.
Any other questions?
Are we good? That concludes the
And just
workshop
before you
meeting.
close it, those numbers were what I've been asking for about 10 months. So thank you.
Which ones?
The ones trying, just a comparison of how much it costs to do
Yeah.
it. I mean, we asked all the other companies to get it, and how can you make a decision without seeing that $1.62 or whatever it was, $1.82, $1.47? You need to see that.
I mean, I had to get it from, making my best judgment and they do a good job on the accounting, so this goes here and this goes there.
Got an award for it.
Because I remember you were saying it costs you about $2 million a year, so I felt comfortable with 2.1.
Yeah, great. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
So we're gonna move the 12th meeting to the 5th. Does that work, Jason? David?
Day before the Masters? Yeah, I'll be.
Already got
You're
my,
going to the Masters,
I already have my
There was
business.
a chance, but that chance fell through.
I had one time and I missed it, and I regret that too. Anyways, that adjourns this meeting at 5:10 PM.